for hopping on with us today. Let's start with, I think, who has the biggest chip on their shoulders, the biggest reason to celebrate this week, and that's the Kentucky Wildcats. What did you think about the way they went into Gainesville, a sloppy football game, but came out with the win?
Look, I think I got everything wrong over the weekend. Most notably, I didn't predict that the Sun Belt was going to become the premier conference in college football. But the one thing that I actually got right was I said Kentucky was going to go into the swamp and win that football game. And part of that was because I thought that back-to-back for Florida was brutal. Having to face Utah, then having to face Kentucky in the swamp consecutive weeks was really difficult. And I give Rich Gangarello, the offensive coordinator for Kentucky, a lot of credit because that team had negative rushing yards in the first quarter. And you know all those NFL scouts are in attendance to watch Will Levis, to watch Anthony Richardson. It would have been really easy for him to say, let's throw the ball 40, 45 times. They didn't have Chris Rodriguez, and instead they continue running the football, and they say, we are going to be able to outlast Florida in this game. And they did. And Kentucky is for real. And if you're sleeping on this team, you shouldn't be right now.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about what Mark Stoops has done in changing that Kentucky offense to going through the air a little bit more, but they're not going to get away from that identity that we've known so long in being able to run the football. Connor, you just said something that I think is really important, and I took so much heat for saying this in the offseason, that Kentucky looks like, you look at that schedule, they should be a 10-win team. At least they look like they're a team that's here to stay, certainly in the SEC East this season. Where do you think they fall right now, not only in the East, but in the grand scheme of the conference?
I think that second tier is really difficult to kind of figure out, okay, between Arkansas, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Those are the three teams that I think could all make a case to be the number 3 team in the SEC right now. I personally would give a little bit of an advantage to Arkansas, but I love what Kentucky's doing. I mean, that defense, it feels 2018-like. It really does. They're so physical in that front seven. And you saw, I mean, just ask Anthony Richardson about the way that game played out. I give that group a lot of credit. Now, I think they're going to have some potential hurdles if they're not able to figure out those issues on the special teams. I mean, they essentially gave away 6 points in the special teams. They need to clean that up if they're going to beat some of these elite teams. But you look at that schedule, and you're exactly right. Like, God, the only one that you think they're probably definitely going to be a significant underdog is Georgia at home. Now, Georgia is a team that, of course, everybody's talked about all the pieces that they have to replace. They could be a very different team in a couple of months compared to who they are right now. But yeah, Kentucky has a legitimate chance to go to a New Year's Six Bowl, especially if they continue to play defense the way that they did at Florida.
Yeah, I'm 100% in agreement with you there. Back to the Florida Gators, you mentioned it. A tough way for Billy Napier to start the season, going Utah, then Kentucky. Now they've got USF coming up this weekend, which was a breakout game for Anthony Richardson a season ago. Where do you think they go from here?
They're going to have better days. We need to stop doing the thing where we compare every great black quarterback to Cam Newton. We need to stop doing it. It's a problem, and I saw that play out a lot with Anthony Richardson, who does some extraordinary things. But this was a guy who was in his 3rd career start, and he's still figuring out how to play the position. And it just bothers me so much that we want to jump to these conclusions. There's got to be another comp that we can make. Anthony Richardson does phenomenal things, and I think he's going to continue to do phenomenal things in the Billy Napier offense. But the problem that I have with him so far is that he doesn't really have that touch in the passing game. I thought Todd McShay had a great breakdown during the game talking about every ball looks like it's on the same line. He needs to continue to find that touch. They need to continue to find that rapport with those receivers. I think that ground game is going to be phenomenal. That offensive line looks much improved, and they're going to have a real identity. But Anthony Richardson is going to have to figure some things out. He will against USF. I mean, he looked phenomenal in that game last year. He looked unstoppable, but I do think that he's going to have an interesting path moving forward, and there's going to be more ups and downs.
I was going to say, you made the point, McShay made the point on Saturday night. It's hard to remember that it was just Anthony Richardson's 3rd career start. This is still a really young quarterback that still has so much hype and so much promise, so stay patient, Gator fans, would be my message. Let's stay in the SEC East. Tennessee. How big of a threat do you think they could actually be now that we're starting to look into some conference games and get further into the schedule, more of this Tennessee offense on tape?
I like this team a lot. And I was really skeptical about the defense. I said throughout the offseason, I don't know if they're going to stop a soul. I really don't. But I've been impressed. And I think that what they did in that game against Pitt, where you really see Byron Young, Tyler Barron, those guys in the front seven kind of get after the quarterback, albeit a backup who was dealing with some mobility issues. But that was my big question with this team. It wasn't going to be what do they have on offense. They have so much firepower and so many different guys that they can turn to. They have 3 guys who are legitimate go-to receivers in that offense, especially with the emergence of Jalen Hyatt and Brew McCoy. We already knew Cedric Tillman was a stud, and too many people were sleeping on him. But I think defensively is where they've shown some pretty impressive signs so far. Now, we'll wait and see what that looks like in SEC play. We know that they've got Anthony Richardson coming up in a little bit here, but I think that they're a team that has kind of that 9-win potential this year because offensively, I mean, I've said it before, I think they can have the number 1 offense in college football. And part of that might be because they're in games in which they have to continue to score points, but they actually just had the lowest offensive output that they've had in a win in the Josh Heupel era, and that was 34 points, which came as a result of a touchdown in overtime. So I still think that Tennessee is a team that's going to give a lot of SEC defense problems. And I think that Josh Heupel is moving in the right direction in year 2.
Yeah, that last stat is a scary thought for sure. We're talking with Connor O'Gara of Saturday Down South. Let's go to the SEC West, and so many directions we could go, but I think we'd be remiss to not go to Texas A&M first. How surprised were you as we were all making these predictions a week ago that that's what went down in College Station with App State getting the win?
I think 2 things can be true at the same time. One is that the Aggies and USC were the 2 most overrated teams in the country entering the 2022 season. I did not think that team would lay an egg the way that it did against App State. I thought they would have some sort of offensive identity. There's no way that I predicted that team would be held to 9 first downs. $9 million buys you 9 first downs. I don't know what Jimbo Fisher is thinking not turning to Max Johnson. He said afterwards that he would have played in that football game had they gotten more possessions. You know how you get more possessions? You get more production out of your offense. And the only way that they were doing that was going to be making quarterback change in that game. It's frustrating to watch this group struggle to run the football.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus right now.